All right, welcome to day 2 of online school. It's Tuesday the 17th. Just a reminder, make sure you get all of your work done and turned in on time. The notes section today will be due tomorrow, Wednesday the 18th by 8 a.m. Yesterday we talked about, the video you watched was about the order Araneae, so the spiders. Hopefully you got something out of that. We will also have a quiz over the scorpions and the spiders, so that's what we did on Monday and what we're doing today. That quiz will be on Wednesday on Socrative, and that will be from 10 to 11. So your time slot will be 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. So make sure you get in there and you do that on time, otherwise you will get a 0. All right, today we are talking about scorpions. Remember, we are working in the phylum Arthropoda, and right now we are in the class Arachnida, which is, again, it includes all of your spiders and your scorpions, your ticks, your mites, even your sea spiders. More specific than just the class, though, we're talking about the order Scorpiones, which is the scorpions. So scorpions are more common in tropical and subtropical zones. You'll find them in some temperate areas. You'll obviously find them in deserts, but they are not confined to just one type of habitat. There's approximately 1,400 species worldwide, so they're not a huge part of the arthropod phylum. They're not even a huge part of the class Arachnida. That class is primarily composed of spiders and ticks and mites, but there's still quite a few different species out there. Most are secretive. You don't come across scorpions all that often, especially during the day, and that is because they hide in burrows during the day. They are nocturnal creatures, and so the chances of you running into a scorpion during the day are slim to none. They're very good hiders, and some of them can burrow pretty deep. They feed largely on insects and spiders, but we're going to see later on that they will eat a wide variety of prey, and again, that is only at night. They seize prey. How do they feed? They seize prey with pedipalps, and at this point you should know what a pedipalp is. And they shred with their chelicerae. Scorpions still do suck liquid food out of their prey. Just like spiders, they release digestive enzymes that dissolve all of the insides of the organism, and then they suck it out. One type of scorpion in particular, these are the sand dwellers. So your desert scorpions, they can actually locate prey by detecting surface waves. They have these special hairs on their legs, and they can detect movement in the sand, which is pretty cool. And those special sensors are only found on the last segment of legs. So thinking about spiders, spiders can also detect movement on their webs. Their eyesight's not very good, but they can still sense movement. It's the same way with scorpions. They can still sense movement in the sand using those special senses. So looking at the morphology of the scorpion, morphology is meaning its anatomy, its shape and function. It has a pretty simple body plan. It's not overly complicated. They have a very short cephalothorax, so it's a fused cephalic and thorax, and that is going to be your green area there. So you can see it's pretty small. Attached to this cephalothorax, you have your chelicerae, which you can see in blue, just their mouth parts. You have a pair of pedipalps, and the pedipalps here are the pinchers. So please don't get confused. There's a pair of small legs near the mouth parts. Those are not the pedipalps. Those are actually a pair of legs. Your pedipalps are going to be those claws, right? The big structures in blue. They're also going to have 4 pairs of legs, so 8 legs total, and they're going to have anywhere from 3 to 5 pairs of eyes. They don't have great eyesight, but they do have lots of eyes. It's more for detecting movement. They have very small chelicerae. The chelicerae that we mentioned earlier are quite small, especially relative to their pedipalps, which are oftentimes huge compared to the rest of their body. So that's the cephalothorax. Its midsection is called a preabdomen. and it only has 7 segments. It's where most of the reproductive organs and such are. And then you have a post-abdomen, which you can see in pink, and that's basically a slender tail. It's composed of about 5 segments, but this is your stinging apparatus. So you have something called a telson, which you can see there in the dark red. That's going to be the venom bulb. That's where your venom is going to be produced and stored. And then you have the stinger, which is called an aculeus, but you can just call it a stinger. And that's going to be the primary mode of transfer of the venom from the scorpion to its prey. So that's the body plan. Again, there's only 3 sections. It's not a super complicated morphology, but it has different parts. Alright, so we just talked about the form of scorpions. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the function. Some of the functions that a couple of organs they have do. And the first one we're going to talk about are something called pectins, and they are found on the preabdomen, the underside of the preabdomen. And they are tactile organs for exploring the ground, and they aid in sex recognition. They can even pick up some odors in the air. So they're very good sensory organs for scorpions. And if you'd like to see what they look like, feel free to Google a picture of scorpion pectins. They're not that exciting, but you might want to see what they look like. The second function we're going to look at is the stinger. So stingers are super important for scorpions. You can find the stinger on the last segment. That last segment is called the post-abdomen. If you've already forgotten, go back to the slide before. But that's where your venom is going to be held. And that venom can range anywhere from mildly painful to even lethal, depending on the scorpion. I will say the majority of scorpions, their venom is mildly painful, cause swelling, and again, just increased pain. The video we watched with the coyote guy, I don't know, it was on YouTube, has a couple videos with scorpions, at least one. So check it out. You can see what it's like to get stung by some of the more painful scorpions. But I do have 2 examples here that I want to show you. We're going to start with this guy here. He is the Deathstalker scorpion. So let's say you get stung by him, and one thing I'll say is if you Google Deathstalker scorpion, you will get several different looking scorpions. That's because the Deathstalker scorpion can have a different color shade depending on the area it's in. But anyway, moving on. Let's say you get stung by the Deathstalker scorpion. You have symptoms that could include increased heart rate, high blood pressure. You can go into convulsions or have a seizure, and it can even lead to a coma. It may even cause death, mostly to small children or unhealthy adults. So people with heart problems oftentimes can pass away from the sting of the scorpion. If it's a small child, obviously it's going to affect them a whole lot more than it would an adult. But this is a solid example of a scorpion that can produce symptoms that can kill even adults. The other thing about Deathstalker scorpions is they're very aggressive. They protect their territory at all costs, and they will come after you and sting you. That's why it's very unlikely that you should have these as pets. Not very unlikely, but you shouldn't have them as pets. It's frowned upon. The other scorpion we're going to look at is this guy right here, and that is an Indian red scorpion. The Indian red scorpion has been said to be the most lethal in the world. It's debated, but this seems to be the most, or one of the most lethal in the world. It really is a small scorpion. I know it's hard to tell from the picture, but it's a tiny scorpion, but it packs a huge punch. So when stung, victims immediately experience nausea, heart problems, even discoloration of the skin, and in a lot of the severe cases, you'll see something called a pulmonary edema. I'll try to write that out without it looking too terrible. Edema. Whew, that was a struggle. Pulmonary edema means it's fluid on the lungs, and that can be something that would definitely kill an unhealthy individual, or maybe even a healthy individual, for sure a child. So those are examples of obviously the extremes. Like I said, in most cases, the venom is just painful. So avoid them. If you're in India or in the Middle East, try to avoid these scorpions. Reproduction in scorpions. So scorpions are viviparous, and all that means is that they bring forth live young that have developed inside of their body. So humans are viviparous. Female gets impregnated. The embryo develops inside the womb and then is given birth to live young. It's the same way in scorpions, which is pretty cool. You would think that they would lay eggs, but they don't. They actually give live birth. Another interesting thing about scorpions is they perform a really complex mating dances, and they can turn down mates based on both strength of the male and how well he performs the mating dance. You're probably wondering what's going on in this picture here. One thing that happens after scorpions give birth, and they can produce over 100 young. They have actually kind of a long gestation period, which means the embryos develop for months to a year. But once they give birth to very small young, and I mean we're talking less than a few millimeters long, they're very tiny, but they hatch and they crawl onto their mother's back and remain there until they are large enough or strong enough to go off on their own. You can see here they don't have a very well developed exoskeleton at this point, so they have to develop that before they can go off on their own. But you're talking about 100, up to 100 young that are crowded onto the back of the mother, which is pretty gross, but also really interesting. Now the young will mature between 1 and 8 years. Obviously, that would be a long time to have scorpions on your back if you're the mother. What we mean by mature is not that it takes that long for them to leave their mother's back. That's how long it takes them for them to sexually mature and be able to reproduce. So they'll be off their mother's back well before they turn 1. But the other interesting thing about scorpions is they can live a long time. They can live up to 15, 25 years even, depending on the species. All right, some interesting stuff about scorpions. They can survive just about anything. Arthropods as a phylum have been on land for over 400 million years, so they've been around for a really long time. Modern scorpions, they can live up to 25 years. We talked a little bit about that at the end of the last slide, but they can live a really long time, and that's not by accident. Okay, so scorpions are pretty much champions of survival. A scorpion can live for a full year without food, which is absurd to go that long without eating anything. Because of the way their lungs are set up, they can stay submerged underwater for up to 48 hours and still survive. They can live in harsh, dry environments like deserts. The reason they can do that is because they can live on only the moisture they obtain from their food. Humans cannot do that. So that is super, super good for them, especially when they live in deserts. They also have a really low metabolism, which means that they only require 1/10 of the oxygen that most insects need. So they can live in very low oxygen environments. So it kind of seems like they're virtually indestructible at this point. And we're going to talk about in a little bit later on in this slide something they're really good at doing that would lead to them thinking they're indestructible. The second thing is they can actually glow in the dark. And what we mean by that is that, and it's really not that well understood for scientists, they're still debating, but if you take an ultraviolet light and put it on scorpions, they will glow. Scorpion's skin absorbs ultraviolet light and reflects it back as visible light. This makes the work of people who do research on scorpions very easy, because what you can do is you can go out at night when they're out hunting, and you can take a black light into a scorpion habitat, and your subjects will light up. The thing you're looking for will literally light up in the dark for you. Though only about 600 scorpion species were known a few decades ago because of this, because of the way they can now find scorpions, they were able to document and collect another 12 to 1400 scorpions, which is pretty cool, and they were just using UV lights to locate them. which is pretty awesome. They fluoresce, if you've heard that word. But the one super cool thing is that scorpion fossils, so super old fossils in the dirt or in the rocks, they still fluoresce, even though they've spent hundreds of millions of years embedded in rocks. So that's really, really, really awesome. The next thing, they eat just about anything. We talked about earlier how they eat spiders and insects. They'll prey on just about anything. They'll eat other scorpions even. Some feed on grubs or earthworms. You've got even larger scorpions that can eat small rodents and lizards. While many will eat whatever they find that seems appetizing at the time, you will have some that only specialize in one particular prey, like a certain family of beetles or a certain family of spiders. A hungry mother, and this is the messed up part. We talked about last time how the early scorpion fetuses or embryos will lay on the mother's back. A hungry mother will eat her own babies if resources are so scarce. Now, obviously, that's a last case scenario, but they have been known to eat their own young if need be. We've already talked a little bit about how scorpions aren't dangerous to humans, so I won't go into that too much. Yes, it's painful. You'll get over it. Just avoid the super dangerous ones. Females are typically larger than males, and this is something you'll see throughout the insect kingdom. For whatever reason, the females tend to be larger. Across most species, really, the females tend to be larger. So we do see that in scorpions. Going back to the eating just about anything, some females will even eat the male after reproduction. So they reproduce, eat the male, and move on with their time. And the males just let it happen. They're just, I guess, happy to reproduce. The last thing that I've got on here is that scorpions are great at reflecting radiation. So you've probably heard before that after some sort of nuclear attack, scorpions or cockroaches will survive. They'll be the only living thing. Scorpions can do the same thing. So a nuclear attack happens, radiation is shot throughout the atmosphere. Scorpions can reflect that radiation off of it so it doesn't destroy it or kill it. So if you have a nuclear holocaust, lots of nuclear attacks, and it's an apocalypse or whatever you want to call it, it might just be you if you're lucky enough to survive, and cockroaches and scorpions. So enjoy that. Alright, so the last thing that I want to talk about is the only scorpion that is found in Kentucky. It's called the southern devil scorpion. If you're looking for it, you'll see it in rocky areas around lakes and ponds. Again, if you really want to find one, I suggest you go at night because that's when they're hunting. Take you a black light, shine it around, you'll see them literally glowing in the dark. Look under rocks, logs, and loose bark, and that's where you'll have the most success finding them. If you are unlucky enough to get stung by it, it won't kill you, but it will be painful. They are venomous, so I would avoid picking these things up with your bare hands. It would be dumb too, obviously. But you can scoop them into some sort of container. I've never seen one in person. I've also never gone looking at night. So if you do get one, you want to bring it in, that would be pretty awesome. Alright, that's it for this video for day 2. I know it's a shorter one. It's only clocking in at about 19 minutes, but there was a lot of writing you had to do, so I'm assuming you were pausing and going back. If you weren't, it's going to hurt you on the quiz later on, so please, please, please go back, take notes, especially for the test that's going to happen when you get back. Alright, so tomorrow make sure you do the quiz. There will be another video tomorrow over probably ticks and mites, or we might move on to centipedes and millipedes. See you later.